What is up, everyone? Welcome to the RotoWire After Dark Champions League show. My name is Jack Burkart. You can find me on Twitter at Jack Burkart. I am joined with Ryan Belongia, who is very rarely without a hat today. And Ryan, I'm tilting.
Yeah, I'm tilting too. I'm without a hat because I just got back from dinner. You can't wear a hat all the time. Sometimes you go out with family and you got to clean up a little bit, shave, take the hat off. Yeah, no, we've been tilting pretty hard since the end of these games. I think you played better than me. I made a couple mistakes. I don't know. Let's get into it. How do you think today's slate went?
Yeah, let's just dive right in. I normally do a Twitter thread where I tweet what I played in cash, hashtag accountability. I like to, if I talk about my opinions, I should show you how I'm doing along the way. And I thought I made a mistake today, Ryan. I thought my lineup was okay, but it was a scared lineup. And for the folks that are listening on the podcast, we have my lineup up, but I played Harry Kane and Leroy Sané at forward. We had Bruno and Josh Kimmich at midfield. DeMarco and Tomiyasu, he appeared as a 3K punt at defense, so I thought that was fine. I played Truban at goalkeeper, who saved like 30 shots and still only had 12 points from Lautaro, it seems. And then the guy that allowed you to play Bruno and Harry Kane was Mason Mount. And Ryan, the 2v2 that I considered, which is absolutely correct. These are marginal decisions in cash, but we can call them right and wrong because, a couple point, just those little things matter. I was looking at 2v2s that involve swapping out Kane and Mount for Marcus Rashford, who I said is a goal dependent player who's almost 3K cheaper. Seems to make sense in comparison to Kane, even though Kane has better goal scoring odds. And that would have allowed me to play Joey Veerman, who takes most of the set pieces for PSV, and he just seemed to have a great floor and a good spot against Sevilla. I think I could have just tinkered with my goalkeeper, played Samba. I didn't care what goalkeeper I played. I think they were all fine. All of the cheap goalkeepers kind of nuked, so it didn't really matter. But I don't know. That's not a process thing. That's just a sometimes that sort of happens type thing. And I think it was bad. I think Kane Mount. I think the other side, Rashford and Veerman. I think it was clearly correct, and I'm actually like very annoyed. I think it was kind of like a weak decision to make there, and it costed me the slate. So if you're scrolling, I finished 16th in this double up. Had I made that swap, I would have cashed easily and just about everything. Won most of my head to heads. Won a bunch of three men's. It would have been a much different day. And I had an inkling feeling, and it was correct. And I played Kane instead, like I was scared. And sometimes this happens with these goal dependent guys, but kind of frustrating. So I don't know, Ryan. How did you do? What do you think of my lineup?
Well, can you scroll down to the bottom of that contest and try to find me?
Yeah, I'll scroll down a little bit. So
It
tough
might
day
be
for
second last. I see myself there. Well, yeah, it doesn't help when your goalie scores -4, but yeah, the first thing I said was playing Kane. Playing Kane is just, I thought it was scared money, kind of like you said. But then you see he's 80%. I'll just say why I did it. I thought the three midfielders that I played were good plays, I guess, on their own. And I didn't know where Bruno ranked. All right, are you not going to play Kimmich? I wanted to play Veerman, and I think Veerman hit his lowest outcome. He had a yellow card subbed in the 70th minute. He pretty much always plays 90. Still scored 11.5. I'm not too disappointed with that. Can even defend Mount a little too. He had the best chance of the game for United, and it got blocked by his own player, and then he had an assist to Højlund that was offsides by a foot. But yeah, just the Kane decision is just, it's something that I usually pride myself to not do those things. I'm not the guy to play Lewandowski and cash in these spots. Everybody knows I've been trying to fade Haaland since the beginning of time. I don't know, it's weird because I didn't really want to play him, but then I decided that the other three midfielders were decent enough plays that I could maybe avoid playing Bruno. I thought I played the best two defenders on the slate. I wanted to get up to a Bayern defender when Mazraoui started. So I don't hate my lineup, but I do hate that I played Kane just because it's not normally something that I do. Yeah, it's really annoying. I don't I guess what I'm saying though is maybe it's not quite as bad. It's not quite as bad. I don't know. But you play Bruno and then play someone cheaper than Kane. Yeah, yeah, that's probably the move. But like, it might look different if Mount gets that goal, and if my goalie, I like, in theory, I should have got an edge playing Benitez. I was able to get up to Benitez instead of one of those cheap keepers. I didn't want to do it, but I just liked my lineup. I had all the guys that I wanted to play. Like I had my top two defenders, the top three midfielders. I was always playing Sane. And
You
so
just
I
had
was
enough
like,
money for Kane.
I was just like, I was okay enough with everything. But yeah, just in general, I hate playing those Kane types in cash, but I ended up doing it here. And yeah, I got what I deserved, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to complain about the results when you play Kane and cash, and in hindsight, it's wrong. And obviously, we're being a little harsh on ourselves, right? If Kane scores a goal, we're like, of course, Kane was going to score a goal. That's why you play him in cash. And there's some merits to sort of taking that range of outcomes when he's 80% and then saying, I think I can do better than the field on the remaining 7v7. Like, if you look at some of the ownership in this, like
Yeah, like, are you
DeMarco is
going to
only
play
7.
Are you going to play Musiala and Bruno? Or, would you rather play Kane and a 6K mid? Musiala, he got the ultimate bailout, or he's
Yeah.
going to score you 0 points,
Yeah,
1 point.
I don't like to come off as too harsh. I try to be humble here. I'm not the most experienced player. I don't play at the highest stakes, and some very successful players played Jamal Musiala, but in hindsight, I just don't think that was correct in the construction. I look at these other players' lineups that do play Musiala, and they had money to play Joey Veerman instead, and they didn't need the forward spot filled. And I just think in spots like that, I don't know, maybe I'll double check that that's correct. In spots like that, like how can you not take a set piece monopolist at home in a decent matchup and you're playing Jamal Musiala who has ranges of outcomes where he just totally busts and drops only he subbed off at the 70th minute. So I didn't like the Musiala play. I'm sorry. If you think I'm wrong, you can yell at me in the comments. I just don't think that was the way to go in cash. So it's frustrating to lose to those lineups. It's frustrating that he does a Cavani, scores 13 points with a goal. And I know that's not the traditional Cavani, but it's close, and I'm tilting. So it stinks to lose to those lineups because of that. I think I was cashing before that fullback for PSV. What was it? Tete? I don't even remember.
Teze,
Teze. He
Teze.
scores a goal. He had a good game with 9 points. He was a good play, but that goal at the end, 9 point floor, and then he get 10 extra points just by being in the right, poachers like Chicharito type of finish. So, that's frustrating to see, but that's cash for you. What are you going to do? Small margins, and I played Kane like a donk, so
Man,
such is life.
such is life. Yeah, that Teze goal was really annoying. Teze he was in my placeholders, and then I saw two things. I saw Mazraoui was going to start, and I thought he was clearly the better play. I looked into Teze. He seemed like he was a good option because of his price, but he never really gets involved in the attack too much, and I didn't really think he had that big. Of course, he scores the goal. I don't know. It's just really tilting. I was cashing the 444 and all my high stakes stuff before that Teze goal. My lineups weren't even good. They were okay. I had Hoyland, which I was very happy with this decision to play Hoyland in the 444. He was 12% owned. Watching how the games went, he seems like a great play. I would do that again. Yeah, it's one of those slates that's so tilting. Listen to this, Jack. I played like 30 GPP lineups, I think. All 60 of my defenders scored over 10 points. It didn't miss on one defender spot. I had tons of Hoyland, and I lost money on the slate. Like it's almost unbelievable. That's
Champions League for you.
That's what I get. It's Kane though. I played Kane in that. I played Kane in a lot of GPP lineups, and it's like you said. It is scared money. It's like you said, because you can say, oh well, other times Kane scores a hat trick or whatever, and oh yeah, okay, well that's cool. 70% of the field has that hat trick too. So it's just something I don't normally do. And sometimes sometimes during a downswing, you end up making plays like that. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, but I mean, lesson learned. I think we'll just be better, stronger for the next one. Were you gonna say something?
No.
Yeah, I was just showing my lineup in the scissor kick. Just because I wanted to point out, I'm hosting the show.
Lautaro.
I wanted to point out Lautaro, who gets a 14-point floor. So you might think, oh, did Lautaro Cavani? Every time the Golazo show panned to that Inter game, Lautaro was getting his shot saved. He hit the crossbar. He hit the woodwork. It was ridiculous. So in the scissor kick, I had the good sense to play Rashford instead of Kane. That gave me money to get up to Lautaro, who I thought was a good play on his own. And I was also playing DeMarco, so I didn't mind the correlation there. I played Joey Veerman instead of Kimmich as a sort of, I think he could just outscore Kimmich in that spot. And, it didn't work out. But, looking at Lautaro, 24%, a little chalky. That's not great. But he and Veerman combined, Veerman was 15%. The scissor kick's not a huge contest, so I feel fine, not going completely off the board in that spot. I got my boy Bryce Samba. People were throwing tomatoes at me in the chat. I'm sorry that my goalkeepers don't always hit right away, but if you waited, the Samba play really matured quite nicely throughout the slate. So, man, Lautaro, he's on the same level as Riyad Mahrez to me. Just every time. He even played well, but he should have had like 36 points. What are you gonna do? It's just so annoying.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was watching the games with my 70-year-old father-in-law who lived the first 50 years of his life in Argentina, and he's a diehard Argentina fan, and he was laughing at all the Lautaro misses because for some reason he just hates Lautaro. So after every miss, he's telling me how bad Lautaro is, and it's just tilting me more and more. And then, it comes back to the Inter game, and it's another Lautaro miss, and then another Lautaro miss, and this guy is just like dying laughing on the couch, and I'm just like tilting my face off, So yeah, it was one of those days.
One of those days. I feel fortunate to have come back with some of my entries. So I think I said on yesterday's show, we always have the Wednesday 2-game slate in the morning. But Ryan, we're 12 minutes in. Thank you for listening to us to the recap. I think it's good to recap your play. It helps you understand what the field did, what went right, what went wrong,
Oh, can I
what
say
made it.
something that went well?
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. For the first time in I don't know how long, somebody challenged me to a $100 heads up today in the early slate, and I won. So, we did okay on the early slate, and that guy played Geraldo Becker against me, who dropped like 30 points, and he still lost by like 20 points. So all I'm saying is, if you're trying to come for me, just be careful.
Yeah, be careful if you shoot at the famous cash game king.
I mean,
Ryan
I don't even
Belongia.
play cash games, and nobody ever challenges me, but I got a $100 challenge today, and I'm not really going to turn that down. So
That was pretty funny. I thought you were stone dead when it was when Becker had that brace. Of course,
oh
Becker
man,
ruins my day in the 2-game slate too. Ryan, we can't tilt this entire show. The people,
no,
they want us to give our wisdom and our insight. These guys who just lost today, they want to hear what we think about what happens tomorrow so they can fade us. But
yeah,
the Wednesday slate looks rather interesting. Not in the sense of the pricing. The pricing is actually mostly appropriate for this slate. But for this for this pot of teams, the biggest favorites tomorrow, we have Manchester City. They are away to RB Leipzig, but their implied win probability is only 55%. So our takeaway is that there's no big favorites on this particular slate. 55% is really, we expect Manchester City to win, but half the time they won't. So that's not a particularly insightful thing, but they're just not dominant favorites despite having the dark green shade in their win column. So they are away to Leipzig. That's been an exciting fixture in the past two, if memory recalls. Barcelona's in a similar spot. They're going to Porto. Porto's never an easy place to get a result. Barcelona's kind of a young team, so we'll see how that goes. The biggest home favorites are Red Star Belgrade, the Serbian champions, going to BSC Young Boys. I don't really know how you make a goal total and a win market when those two teams face each other, but the powers that be say that Red Star Belgrade have an implied probability of 45% to win. And the goal totals aren't that high, and the rest of the matchups are basically toss-ups. You got Dortmund is hosting AC Milan. You got Lazio making a trip to Celtic. That's never an easy place to play. And then probably the most exciting matchup of the day is Newcastle hosting PSG. That should be a really cracking home atmosphere. Ryan, what do any of these games stick out to you? What are your feelings when you're just looking at the matchups for this slate? You're on mute, Ryan.
amateur hour over here.
Brutal.
I think it's an atypical Champions League slate in that these totals and are lower than we're used to seeing. There's always multiple totals above 2. Today we had Bayern at like 2.4 and United over 2 and somebody else close to 2. Yeah, so like on the surface you look at this and I would like it's a spot to fade Man City, the title of the show. I would want to fade City here. I would want to fade Barca here. But then you look and it's well, like who do you fade them for? Because we have these other teams that you don't really want to play either. Like Dortmund is a tough team to play. Lazio away to Celtic. Newcastle PSG. I'm very interested to watch that match, but I'm not sure how I feel about it for DFS. So it's like I'm all about trying to fade these spots for City and Barca, but it's kind of tough to know where to go. If you just look at the prices on this slate, I think you're probably going to have some. You're going to want to have some Red Star or Young Boys for tournaments. I mean, they're just so cheap. Like they just make you can play whoever you want if you include 1 or 2 from Red Star or Young Boys, and yeah, it just doesn't seem like you're sacrificing too much to do it. Like again, if you fade City, there's nothing else there. You're not missing out on anything. So it's kind of wide open. But then after all that is said, like all these other spots suck. Maybe other people don't really want to play City that much either, and it just ends up being maybe we just play City because there's no opportunity cost in that direction either. I don't know. What do you think?
It's difficult for me. I kind of like the Manchester City Leipzig match more than the Barcelona Porto match. If I had to pick one of those, which would be a slog, I would speculate that it's more likely to be Barcelona at Porto. I mean, I just think it's a tough. I think it's in a tough way fixture for Barcelona. Manchester City and Leipzig are both they're pretty exciting teams. I think they'll try to attack. So I think there's more value on playing both players from that side. So if I had to pick one of those chalky games, because I think Manchester City and Barcelona are going to be popular, there are punts in this slate that allow you to play any player that you want. I think I would prefer just to target the Manchester City attack. The attack's fairly concentrated these days too, which kind of helps you from a DFS perspective. If Jack Grealish doesn't start, it's like, oh, I can just play Foden and Alvarez. There's only like 4 players to rotate between, and they're all reasonably priced, and you can afford them. So it feels that feels like a better spot to me. But we'll break it down a little bit. The other spot that seems strong is Lazio away to Celtic, just because their players are pretty well priced. So you have Luis Alberto, he's 9,100. He's probably gonna be very popular in cash. But Ciro Immobile, I think is only 6,500. He's one of the most likely goal scorers on the slate. I think that Lazio game will see some utilization. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I don't want to try to guess ownership too much, especially in Champions League where it can be quite volatile. So why don't we dig into it? We can start talking about just what the type of cash game template that we're looking at. And the thing that stuck out most, if you scroll down and you look at our set piece taker list, and then you take a peek at Red Star Belgrade, so I have to find them. You'll notice the name of Jean-Philippe Crasso. He's 3,600, and he took Red Star Belgrade's lone set piece. He only costs 3,600. He's forward eligible. I was digging in as much as I could. There's not too much info on the Serbian league, unfortunately. But if you look at SofaScore, you can see player heat maps, which are nice. And it appears that Crasso takes right-sided corners. He takes penalties. He's taken several penalties in league and in Champions League qualifying already. I mean, Ryan, does every lineup just come pre-filled with Crasso, especially from a cash point of view, and you fill out the rest of the 7?
Yeah, I mean, cash for sure, right? The only thing I was just looking at his recent games, and he played 45 minutes over the weekend and 45 minutes a couple weeks before that, and then like didn't play in the game in between. So like why, I don't know anything about Red Star, but he hasn't really been playing much. And I get that he's 3,600, so for cash it's not really a decision, but yeah, it just seemed kind of curious because I look at Red Star and Transfer Market has this Crasso as their second highest valued player. But yeah, he just like hasn't been playing more than 45 minutes in the few recent matches I saw. Again, it doesn't really matter for cash. And that whole spiel I went on at the start was talking about tournaments. You know, what you said about City, you know, it's very easy for cash games to just play Alvarez and Foden, right? The cash game decisions seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think there's I was looking at a 2v2, but basically what I thought is I can just play Krasso, especially if he starts. And I was quickly able to afford just about whoever I want, whoever I want in the lineup. You have to pick a spot where you're going to punt if you're going to play Alvarez and Foden, I think. Whether it be at second defender or whether you use I want to get his name right. Hwang In-beom, he's 3,100. He's midfield eligible. He does take some set pieces for Red Star Belgrade as well. You know, that allows you to pay up twice a defender. I'm not sure that's going to be the best route, but we'll dig into that. But I do agree with you overall. You know, we can just punch in Crosso, especially in cash games. We'll talk about what to do with him in tournaments because it does seem like a fragile range of outcomes. I'm not sure that we should. I'm not sure like the standard deviation on the results of this game is like very narrow. So what I'm saying is that, you know, the bookies say that Red Star are favored, but it seems like a pretty volatile spot. I'm not going to put too much credence in that. The sample size is going to be small. So if you're heading into tournaments and you're just jamming Crosso, I mean, it helps you play whoever you want, but I feel like it could be a mistake, especially if he busts. Again, we'll get a little bit more into that in cash. I think you just do it. But I guess the question is do you want to play Luis Alberto instead of both Julian Alvarez and Phil Foden? So Alvarez is 10K. He's taking most of the set pieces. He's scoring all the goals for City. He just looks absolutely incredible. He looks like someone who's destined to go to, you know, Real Madrid and just absolutely crush there. You know, whatever club he'll say that his boyhood dream club was, he'll end up going there. Um, so it's tough to fade him. I don't like fading Phil Foden at 8K. You know, the goals haven't been there, but we know the floor is and we know what he's capable of. But I mean, Luis Alberto, he's a set piece monopolist and a decent matchup. If you had to rank those three, Ryan, how would you rank Luis Alberto, Julian Alvarez, and Phil Foden? Ranking them at price.
Yeah, I think Luis Alberto would be last. You know, there's some things to like about Luis Alberto. He's played 90 minutes in every single start this season, like 10 starts. And he takes pretty much all the set pieces. I mean, Cataldi might take one here and there, but or else you're going to get Alberto on all the sets. He normally doesn't have too much upside. Now, Celtic should be a pretty good matchup, but they are on the road. And like this Lazio squad they're not like world beaters. I mean, it's a squad that hasn't changed much over the years, and they kind of are just getting older. You know, they got a few new guys, but yeah, Luis Alberto he never excites me. Like, I think you've got a 10-point floor, and then you've got to hope for, you know, a goal or an assist. Yeah, he's not as good as the City guys, in my opinion. But you know, we might be on something a little bit different in that I think you can easily play all three.
I was just looking at my dummy lineup, and I agree with you. You can make a way that you can play all three together. It's worth noting that Luis Alberto has midfield eligibility, and so does Phil Foden, and you can certainly take advantage of that and play those guys if you want to. I'm just looking at Luis Alberto's game logs. Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I just I'm not even sure Alberto is the next best guy after the City guys.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was pulling up his game logs, and I think I was more enthusiastic because I accidentally had the FanDuel tab open. So you should absolutely make sure that you never have the FanDuel tab open when you're looking at the RotoWire tools. DraftKings, it's much more modest. He has a good range of outcomes, but you're looking at a guy who's just kind of, I think you said yesterday, a ho-hum 12 points. I think if you play someone like Luis Alberto, you're looking for a ho-hum 12 points. He doesn't take penalties.
How many
really does. Go ahead.
Yeah. How many did Kimmich score today?
Oh, I don't even want to know. Let's take.
No, he got his whole hum 10 points. I think that's who I said it about, right? 11 points. I think that's exactly what he scored.
Yeah, I think in this case, Luis Alberto was a whole hum 14 points at 9,100, and pricing's a little bit tighter. So that might not be the best place to go. But you were hinting that you liked a third player. You had a behind Alvarez and Foden, you had a third forward. So who do you like as a forward that you want to throw in there?
Yeah, I mean, according to the odds, they're underdogs, but look at Dembele's game log.
I'll pull it up.
A player that actually excites me, just in terms of his ability outside of DFS and taking a majority, not all the sets, but he takes most of the sets for PSG. They're the same price.
I was about to say I don't think he's starting, and I was looking at the Barcelona lineup. I was wondering what happened.
Yeah,
He's on PSG now.
He's on PSG now. I mean, his game log looks pretty good. I get, at Newcastle, maybe it depends what you think of that matchup. That's an interesting matchup.
I think you're
Alberto's
correct.
on the road too. Alberto's in Scotland. I know, obviously, Celtic are a much worse team, not a worse team than Newcastle. But I just feel like Dembele offers a bit more upside.
Yeah, that's I think you make a fair point there. I did have Dembele written down, but more as an afterthought. I guess I'm always just thinking about like who's the most favored team, and I keep on going down the list. That game's a toss-up
Right.
though, and those three games in the middle, the AC Milan match against Dortmund, the PSG Newcastle, those are all the same game. Like I think you can treat them exactly as the same. Although the PSG Newcastle game does seem like it has more potential to smash in terms of goals. But I have his game logs up here: 24 floor points. In the recent league game, he had 24 points with 1 assist against Marseille. Absolutely crushed against Dortmund. I guess the only knock on him, Ryan, is maybe
He
he's
hasn't
going to
even
be
scored
liable for
yet.
70 minutes. Yeah,
Oh.
he hasn't even scored, so he's kind of got like those Eze game logs, which is a great range of outcomes. I played Eze over Holland and Cash a couple weeks ago. So if we kind of think of him as like Eze in a decent spot, it seems like a great play. Though Eze always plays 90 minutes, and there's some fragility in Ousmane Dembele's minutes. So you'll have to look at the PSG
You're right. There
bench a little
is.
bit.
Yep, and that's something to consider in cash. He's definitely not. Yeah, he's not guaranteed 90 like Alberto is. It's nice to see that he played 90 in 2 out of the last 3, and this is an important game. And the game that he didn't play 90 was a game that they won 4-0. But yeah, you're right. You're right.
And one of those games, where he played 67 minutes, that was before their match against Dortmund. That's a very difficult Champions League group, so it makes sense that, they might want to rotate their players a little bit.
It's like you think he'd be good for 80, unless the game's like somehow out of hand. I would think he'd be good for 80.
I don't think it'll get out of hand, and if it does, goal
Right.
differential might mean something in this Champions League group. So that's a good point. I definitely think Dembele is a better play than Luis Alberto now that I take a look at it. It just seems like they have a similar role, and I think I do like the matchup a little bit more. And of course, they're the same price. So in cash games, I hope you click the right name.
But also maybe you don't need either, because there's some other guys when we get to midfield. Maybe you want to play a 6K 7K midfielder instead.
Yeah, the current lineup. Let's go into midfield. The current lineup that I have, I'm using a punt. I'm spending down a goalkeeper, which is fine, I think, in Champions League, and I'm using just a stone punt at defender. But that allows me to play, Foden. You can play Alberto, Alvarez, Dembele. Pick whatever 3 you want. You use the punt Crosso, and then you can play Ilkay Gundogan at 6,900. Now Gundogan's been taking most of Barcelona's set pieces. I think he had an assist in the previous Champions League game. He just seems a little bit underpriced in this spot, Ryan. So it almost feels like a mistake not to use him. But you do have to punt a defender spot when there's some decent defenders in the 4 and 5K range that you'll want to play as well. So that's the sort of trade-off that you're looking at. From a cash game point of view, what do you think about Ilkay Gundogan on this slate?
I'm not quite as enthusiastic as you, but I understand the points. I just see that he took 12 corners against Sevilla last game and scored 10 points. He played 90 against Mallorca the game before and scored 3 without a yellow card. At home against Celta Vigo, he scored 9. He plays deep for them. and this isn't City. So, like, to me, he's accurately priced because if he doesn't give you an assist, he's going to give you 10 points. Maybe get 12, maybe get 14, if you get some shots assisted, which would be good. I would like that for 6,900. But yeah, I mean, I think he's fine. I'm not in love with it.
I think that's a perfectly good counterpunch. I just saw the set pieces and I thought it had to be good, but he will be playing a little bit more deep in this formation. So, I mean, if it starts with João Felix, Ferran Torres, and Robert Lewandowski, he's already in a midfield three. And Romeo is definitely the most defensive player, but I think Gavi is going to be the player who has a little bit more license to roam around and do whatever the heck he wants. Where Gundogan might have to be the more disciplined player in this setup.
And part of it too is I don't love at Porto. Like, yeah, they're the second biggest, they're the second biggest favorite on the slate, but this isn't home to Red Star or something. This is at Porto. So, it doesn't like scream smash play to me, but it's a fine cash play. It's similar to the Kimmich play today, but I don't think quite as good, but similar.
I don't think 14 points is necessarily ho-hum for Ilkay Gundogan.
No,
with all this sort of
stuff.
Maybe it's more of a ho-hum 8 points.
Yeah.
Whenever you're talking about 7K, 6.9K for 8 points, you can probably fade that guy in cash games. So I'm pretty good case for Gundogan. So if you're not going to play Gundogan, there's some other names in that price range. If Jack Grealish somehow starts, I noticed he was 7.2K. That's never a bad price for him, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to play him in cash. Julian Brandt takes most set pieces for Dortmund. He's 7.1K. You could utilize him. You're just in this sort of really tricky construction where, again, you have to completely punt at a defender. Are you going to be looking in this price range, Ryan, or do you think about maybe spending down a little bit more and looking in the sub 6K range, some guy in the 4 or 5Ks?
Well, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, when I was in this range, initially I had Gundo. Like, it's probably the default. You just put Gundogan in, but then, then I see Brandt, who's priced $200 more, and maybe a little more of a sub risk, but I think similar floor and more upside. So I get the argument for Brandt over Gundo as well. Again, I get the argument both ways. I think they're very similar plays, but I think Brandt has more upside, but probably a lower floor. But yeah, I might be in a lower range. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure either guy is a huge priority.
I'm agreeing that they're good plays. You can make it work in that price range, but maybe not necessarily a priority.
But also, so here's the thing. I don't know that Luis Alberto and Dembele aren't like fantastic plays either. They're decent plays. So like, I've considered you just play Gundo or Brandt, and then you can improve maybe keeper and second defender. That is an option because, yeah, like Alberto and Dembele, you're not like missing anything by not having them either. So I get the argument if you want to just save money and try to make the rest of your lineup better.
Let me tinker for a moment. So if you just play the city forwards and Crosso, and then you can kind of do the quote unquote, we'll keep using this, I like it, ho-hum. You could just use Gundogan and Julian Brandt because they're taking most of the set pieces. That does give you 2,100 salary based on what I'm using the rest of my lineup. And that does make a very meaningful contribution to defender. And you also don't necessarily have to play blast switch at goalkeeper, which I already have. So I can definitely see that from a cash game point of view. So that will be a decision if you want to play 3 of those expensive forwards, or if you want to take on a more balanced construction. We'll have to decide which one is better.
Yeah, because we'll decide. But I have 3 of those expensive guys, and I still think I'm rather balanced. But yet you have to punt at keeper, which for some is tough to swallow. But
that's not been tough to swallow these days for me. I'm a bit more.
I'm fine with it.
I think when I started playing DFS, I got much more tilted by goalkeeper. I'm like, oh, I got to get goalkeeper right. the slates just kind of swim by enough that, I just spend down, and sometimes you see the -8. I apologize, if I write up a goalkeeper like Neto at 4K away to Arsenal, at home to Arsenal, and he gets -6. I apologize. This sometimes happens in DFS, but unless you have a really novel goalkeeper process, most of us are just guessing. We're doing our best, but we saw what the spending down at goalkeeper could do. So I certainly don't mind. I think it's almost the only player that I see spend up a goalkeeper regularly in Champions League is Saramek, who always does and just has a completely different process than all of us. So I don't think there should be any major takeaways from that.
I
Why am
played
I rambling?
Ulrich in the 444 today, just for the record.
Well, and of course he got stained and probably deserved to concede a second one at the end of the
Yep.
game.
No, you're right though. I remember when I first started playing the high stakes tournaments, like when I didn't have the bankroll for it, and when it really hurt if I lost. I couldn't punt keeper. I was just like, because it was too much money really for me at the time, and I just remember not being able to punt keeper. I had to pay up for keeper. And then now it's just like the complete opposite. I just punt keeper and I get -8s and -10s, and then I think to myself, hey, remember when you just didn't used to punt keeper and things used to go pretty well back then? But yeah, I don't know. It goes both ways, like
It
you
does,
said, it
and then
goes
you
both
spend up the
ways.
next slate, and Aderson, you look at your Aderson captains in Showdown, and he's got -6 because he conceded 2 goals to Wolves. So, sometimes I think you just need the random number generator to to shake out your way.
Yeah.
Speaking of cheap goalkeepers, Ryan, you kind of mocked my Samba pick today. How about Arsenal struggled a little bit, so
Yeah, yeah. No, that was I'll tell you a couple things. When I saw the atmosphere in northern France
it
for
was
that Champions
fantastic.
League game, I immediately thought that Samba was a fine play. I would have been fine playing that. But Saka got injured. I'll use that as an excuse. He got injured in the first half, and Len scored 2 of the sweetest goals really you could see. I mean,
That
but
first goal was incredible.
first
Like,
goal
that
was
finish, oh
unbelievable. I
my
can't.
god.
That was out of a video game,
Yeah,
basically. That first
that was a
goal.
FIFA goal.
But yeah, no, it was. He was a good play.
Thank you. The goalkeeper king, Jack Burkart.
Mm-hmm.
Only when I'm right, though. Half the time. um, why don't we keep on talking about midfielders? Some cheaper names that stuck out to me. I already mentioned Huang and Biom at 3,100. He might take some set pieces. Red Star are technically favorites. Ryan, I don't think you need him. I tinkered with a lineup that had both him and Crosso, and I was like, I have too much money left over. It just didn't feel like necessarily the best move to make. There might be a place for that type of construction, especially if you want to spend up a goalkeeper in some spots. Although I'm not sure why you want to do that given the context of the slate. Yvonne Jamie was popular last week and 2 weeks ago in cash. He's 3,800. That seems fine. Matt O'Reilly took a corner, though I think Turnbull regularly takes set pieces for Celtic. If there's any Celtic fans, I know there's at least one in the Discord. You can correct me on that. Matthias Nunes at 4K. The cheap options, I don't know. I'm not particularly inspired. I feel like if I'm spending in this range, I feel like I probably just want to look at why am I doing that in the context of my entire lineup. I don't know. What do you think about the cheaper midfielders, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm right with you. I don't think they're necessary. Yeah, it kind of. There's just no good ones. So yeah, it just kind of it's why are you doing it? We'll get to defender, and I'm not sure there's really anyone else. You don't have to pay up for 2 defenders really either. Yeah, there's just none of these cheap midfielders seem to have much upside. The guys you mentioned, that guy on Red Star in Wem, or however you say his name, Huang.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to do it. I don't know. He doesn't really gain you anything. I'd be more likely to play someone from Young Boys. We haven't mentioned Young Boys yet. The odds say Red Star is favored. I don't really know how this game's going to go, but I think anyone, Red Star is a good matchup for who's ever playing them too, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who's going to start, but this Ugrinich, he seems decent. He takes sets. He's attacking. He scores and assists. I don't know that he's necessarily a cash play, but depending on the lineup, he's been splitting with males.
Hmm.
I know we have males projected to start, but I've seen other lineups where males isn't starting. But in that case, maybe Ulysses Garcia would split. I'm not sure, but pretty confident that Ugrinic, or however you say his name, is takes sets. Maybe Pens. Who takes Young Boys Pens? I should have checked that.
I did not check that ahead of time. I feel like they have a striker, Itten, who might take them. I know he sometimes studs for
Maybe.
Switzerland, so
Yeah.
just kind of based on that sort of level of authority. But that's something that we can look up, and that's something that if you join the RotoWire Discord, you can just ask, and then Bear will probably chime in right away because he's an encyclopedia of these types of things. Yeah, I think Agrinic seems nice. I don't know if he played in these like Champions League playoff spots, but I know someone has told me, probably Bear, that he does take some set pieces for them. He's only 5,500. I mean, yeah, why not? I mean, I have no reason to fear a home game again. Well, maybe I should be scared because the home atmosphere at Red Star Belgrade can be absolutely incredible. So I should
Hmm.
retract that. But it's not like these players are world beaters. So I think, yeah,
I mean,
Greenwich,
yeah,
that
you
might
got
be
to
more of a
feel like,
GPP play.
yeah, probably more of a GBP play, but you got to feel like Young Boys are seeing this as one of their opportunities too. Um, yeah,
Right?
I don't know.
I don't know
Yeah.
who their group is. Who are the other two people in their group? You got Young Boys in Belgrade, and then how did the groups work out?
Um,
No, and then Porto and Barcelona. Oh, these two teams might go
Porto and
after each
Barca.
other.
Right.
They're going to need the 3 points because they're going to be battling it out for that second spot with Porto. So
Yeah, I see we got a comment in the chat too from Ozzy. That atmosphere in Belgrade is going to be nuts. He's right. Yeah. And honestly, it does move me a little bit off like Young Boys guys. I think about that stuff in like tiebreaker spots, but um, I don't know. Everyone in that game is cheap. So for tournaments, they just like make stuff work.
yeah, and if both teams are going to attack, there is the incentive there. I don't know if any of these teams can feel confident that they can get a result against Barcelona.
Oh, there was City and Leipzig.
Oh, are they?
There was City and Leipzig.
Oh, okay. Then I was just getting my wires crossed. Well, yeah, in that case, they're going to be duking it out, those two. So I think these teams are going to feel like they need 3 points in order to get second place in the group. So maybe that makes for a good back and forth match. And that's especially good for tournaments, especially if that match has goal upside combined with salary relief that we need to play better plays. I think I'm just agreeing with you in different words, Ryan. Um, I wanted to talk about one more player. Adam wrote the column for the slate, but he mentioned Mattia. I'm going to butcher this name. Zakagni. He might play forward he's 6K. He's midfield only, but he plays as a forward for Lazio. 75 minutes. He seems to have a decent GPP range of outcomes. I don't know, Ryan. Do you know anything more about this player? What do you think about that guy at 6K?
Yeah, actually, I think yeah, he's a good tournament play. He's like I don't know how to describe it. Like I said at the start, lot of these Lazio guys, I don't know. I just find myself never wanting to play, but Zaccagni actually has upside in my opinion. Like he's really good. At least he used to be. I haven't been watching Lazio this year or really much last year. But I used to no, he's only 6K, and I just remember he was one of those guys that you're always like, yeah, why don't they start him more? Or whenever he started, you would want to play him. He just brings something different, like more attacking. Like Immobile is like older and not really doing much anymore, except your classic number 9 stuff. And Alberto, he's older and doesn't really get forward much. He's just sort of like controlling the game and slowing it down, and he's good at passing and playing people. Zaccagni is kind of like the wild card that comes up with something special. So yeah, I think it's a good tournament play. He's a good price.
He's a good price. And I think from a roster construction point of view, if you want to take a more nerdy approach to this, he's midfield eligible only. So there's going to be some chalky forwards in this slate. You have Hollins, you have Lewandowski's, and then you have the good cash game plays that we were talking about, several forward eligible plays. So that should keep his utilization limited. I think 3 forward eligible players are going to be popular, especially in utility. So with that in mind, yeah, I think that's a great play in tournaments, and I think that was a great nugget unearthed by our fearless editor, Adam Sidroik. So shout out to you, Adam. That's a good tournament play. Hopefully it pulls through. If it doesn't, though, I will yell at you in the chat in the Discord. I think that's about all I have for midfield, at least for cash games. So maybe we can move on to defender. And again, Ryan, Adam's article was pretty good. He wrote up Kieran Trippier, and I'm like, man, like I've been feeling a little mad about Trippier. He smashed against Sheffield and Burnley. Jordan called me out for it in the Discord. I was watching some games earlier in the season, more difficult matchups, and Trippier just wasn't bombing forward as much. So, Ryan, I tried to no ball, and it backfired on me. But that's what happens sometimes. In this spot against PSG, it's a tough matchup. It's at home. He will take most of the set pieces, and at 5,800, I was like, do I want to play Trippier that much? Is he a must? I keep on thinking back and forth. And Adam just says, if you're not playing against Manchester City and Trippier's under 6K, I think in cash games, you can just click it and move on with your life. I think I agree with him, Ryan, but I don't know. What do you think about the current state of affairs with Kieran Trippier?
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and I think I agree because there's no other good defenders besides him. Like, maybe that's the wrong way to put it. There's some fine defenders, but he stands out. You feel like he should be a little bit more expensive. The one thing, though, I agree with what Adam said. Is if it's not City, you kind of just play Trippier. I think in this spot he's going to have to get there on set pieces. He's got maybe the toughest matchup a right back could have. He's right up with Kylian Mbappe. And that's a nightmare matchup for Trippier, someone who is not known for his speed. So yeah, I don't have that much faith in Trippier's open play value in this spot. But it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. He's too cheap and he takes all the set pieces. It doesn't matter for cash games. And there's not the opportunity cost on this slate. So yeah, he's just a no-brainer for cash. It's one of those, it's a little different than today's slate. I don't know, maybe you can try to show me some other defenders, but I'd almost take 10 points from Trippier and still jam him in tournaments just because there's no one else.
I was writing down defenders, and the only other defenders I wanted to write down were more expensive. And, you don't necessarily want to play them, especially in cash games. So I noticed that João Cancelo was 6.1K, just the most frustrating player on planet Earth, at least for me lately. But he at least has, goals in him. So I think that's a tournament option if you don't want to play Trippier. Ozzy, he's always in the chat, so shout out to you, Ozzy. He's saying the more I like this matchup, the more I love PSG. That's a horrible matchup, having Kylian Mbappe make runs at you the entire time when you're Kieran Trippier. So that's absolutely going to test the Newcastle back line. I don't know. That's going to be very tough. He might get pinned back. Lucas Hernandez is a decent fullback, also manning that side. And then I think PSG do kind of carry sort of like a water jug carry in midfield. So they'll all be doing a lot of work so that their forwards can bomb forward. So you don't really feel like there's going to be much space for Trippier when you think about it. So that's an interesting point. So, if you want to play João Cancelo because he has a goal in him, I think that's a good play in tournaments. Only 300 more at 6,100. Ryan, what do you think about David Raum at 5,700? I kind of like David Raum in this spot because I think the Leipzig City game can be a bit back and forth. It seems like Raum's on set pieces. I just like playing him in DFS. I think he's one of the first names I ever highlighted when I started working for RotoWire. So maybe there's some sentimental value there. But do you think there's any value there at 5,700 if you want to play two expensive defenders?
Yeah, I do. It's tough to play guys against City, but he's a decent price and at home. Yeah, I think it's fine. He could get there.
So what's the difference between playing David Raum against Manchester City when he's playing at home versus, Trippier with he's facing a great attack and he probably has more defensive response. I don't know. Both Raum and Trippier are going to have defensive responsibilities. Both
Yeah,
take set pieces, and
yeah,
the game environment could be good for Raum. So I don't know. I think it's worth consideration at least. Please correct me
yeah.
though.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. The difference is just that, like, Man City, no matter what, are gonna dominate possession, and like there are gonna be times when Leipzig have set pieces and other matches where they don't have many. Whereas like this Newcastle game, they might be the ones on top in this game. You don't really know. Like you don't really know. They're kind of favored in this game, and this PSG team hasn't been great. They're inconsistent. They don't have Messi and Neymar. They concede goals. Newcastle's at home. Like, yeah, Trippier's individual matchup against Mbappe is a nightmare, but the team matchup is just so much different. I mean, there's not usually much floor to be had against City. But you're right, there can be. It doesn't happen all the time. This game could be back and forth. They could get some sets, if they go down. Also, like the City team is not quite the same without KDB and maybe Gundo and maybe whatever else, but still, it's always tough to target City. While we're on that game, no, go ahead.
I was just going to look at David Raum's game logs. I mean, just see how tethered he is necessarily set pieces. But he's got games where he's got 4 corners, but still getting in 10 crosses. So again, from a tournament point of view, if you feel like you're the type of player who's just going to jam Julian Alvarez and Phil Foden, I think it makes sense to sprinkle in David Raum into those tournament lineups, because if the game is up and down, that's that's good for everyone involved. If David Raum is having a good game, it probably means that City are going to be forced to be launching shots and things of that nature. So that's
Yeah, I
my
almost
case
think
for it.
I think it works the other way. I think Raum has the best game when they're losing, when City score early. I think Raum has a good game when City score early. Yeah, I see in the chat Hakimi, better play, maybe. I can always get behind Hakimi and GBPs just because he's so talented offensively. Like he just always has goals, and I'm like 3 goals in the last 5 matches, and he's always done that his whole career. Look at the shot numbers on Hakimi. Like
this is where it pays to play interleague, because Hakimi's probably 7.5K in the Sunday, 1:45 Eastern time interleague slates.
He's got a ridiculous shot on him, so he's always fine taking long shots. He gets forward all the time. He's best friends with Mbappe. That doesn't hurt.
The friendship narrative. Thank you for throwing.
It's there. It's there. You can see it. But yeah, no, Hakimi. I always like Hakimi and GBPs. He's just so good.
Yeah, he's the best right back in the world, and I don't know. It's not like that's a
attacking wise, yeah.
Yeah, and you see that there's no yellow cards as well, which I sort of love to see for my defenders. But cue the yellow card if I decide to play Hakimi. Yeah, Hakimi looks like a great play in this spot as well. So I don't know. I think from a GPP point of view, I think there's some I think there's some wiggle room that you can have if you want to play a couple of these defenders. It would just require playing like an Mbiom or something like this. I see there's some other names being mentioned as potential fullbacks.
Yeah, there's more guy. Maybe the guy that I have we haven't got to yet. The second guy in my lineup.
Go for it.
It was just a price thing, looking for the cheap fullbacks in decent matchups. Ryerson at 4,100 for Dortmund. Home to Milan's a pretty good spot because Milan's a team that usually isn't going to possess you to death, and they're going to concede chances. And I wasn't sure about Ryerson, but he scored over the weekend, and he dropped like 22 fantasy points or something. He's been taking shots and he crosses, and he's only 4,100. So
he sometimes plays as a forward for them. I think Ryerson
or a wing back. So yeah, like up further forward. Yeah.
In this lineup, we have been playing a back four. That's what's posted, but we'll take a look at when lineups are revealed. He's definitely a more attacking player. So at 4,100, yeah, that's probably just too cheap, Ryan, especially for a home fullback. You can just take that.
Yeah, I'm
Take
looking
that
at
free
him. I
scoring run.
think he's fine for cash games. But yeah, this is another slate where I don't want to play a center back if I don't have to. There's so much value. I forgot to needle you a little bit. I think the one mistake with your lineup in the 44, there was just no reason to play center backs today. I get that the Bayern center backs are fine, but just in general, no reason to play center backs, in my opinion.
I wasn't too particularly happy about that, Ryan, but
I
I
get
didn't
though,
want to pay
I'll
him for
defend you,
goalkeeper.
Jack. I'll defend you. I get that in certain constructions, you couldn't get like the five forwards that you want. And I saw the five forwards you want, you needed to punt a center back. Trust me, I went back and forth a long time. Like, do I want these five guys that I want the most and punt a center back? Or do I play that defender and then you have to downgrade one guy and just take your chances? So yeah, I get it. It's a tough decision.
I wasn't happy about it. I had 3,500. Any more spending up at goalkeeper would have gotten me to like Alex Merritt or Kepa, and I was just not going to do that in that lineup. I mean, I could do it in a bigger GPP, but I didn't feel like that was the way to go. So I had 3,500 left. I'm like, well, I guess I have Leroy Sané, so maybe I get a center back
No, I
goal
think
and
it's
take
fine
20%.
actually. I think it's fine. Those were the Bayern guys were the guys I was considering.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I don't think it was that bad. It's similar to playing, like a Ruben Diaz,
Yeah.
in that spot. So I
Ryan,
get
he
it.
was 1.7%, so therefore he's a good play. I can just say, but the ownership, if I played the slate 1,000 times, he scores. Oh well, so it goes. Any other defenders to mention? Ulysses Garcia at 4.4K for young boys. He took a set piece, so that might be an option. We have Lucas Klosterman starting. He's 2.6K. If you absolutely need to punt, there are center backs you can do that with. And we talked about that strategy last time. I mean, if everything else fits into your lineup, you can kind of just take the 5 points from a center back and just ask everyone to mow you down with your other attacking players. But I would rather play Ryerson or someone like that in this spot if I can afford it.
Yeah, I mean, you could have played $2,600 Ostegard today, and he
I don't want to talk about it.
got on the.
You even
got on the
mentioned
score.
him yesterday. You're like,
I mentioned
Ostegard at
him. I know
2.6K.
he's got
You could
goals in
use him
him.
in the utility, and then he freaking scores a goal.
Yep.
Such is life. Do we have any goalkeeper takes, Ryan? I like Diogo Costa at home against Barcelona. Why not? He's only like what do I have? 4,000. I feel like the cheap goalkeepers are underpriced on this slate because the big favorites aren't such big favorites.
I have Costa. Yeah, I have Costa. I'd play. Yeah, I don't. I have Costa, but I'd play Blaswich too. How funny! What, Jack? We're an hour through the show and nobody's mentioned Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I see that Steve is in here, and he, fortunately watched his Ashoka finale.
This is what I will say about Erling Haaland, because City play Leipzig every year in the Champions League, it seems like. I know they've played them like 4 or 6 times in like the last 2 years. Well, last year in this matchup, Haaland scored 1 point against Leipzig. And in the reverse fixture, he scored 66, which included 5 goals. I think he got 4 of them in the first half. So yeah, they played Leipzig twice last year. He scored once away from home, and then, 1 fantasy point, and then 66 fantasy points. So yeah, I don't know.
That's a pretty big range of outcomes.
Yeah, that's kind of what he's gonna do this time. I don't know.
If you have 1 in 66, that means on the sample size of 2, your median is about 33.5. So therefore, Haaland, what a smash play. We
Yeah.
have some people in the chat. They want to know, Ryan, this is the nerdiest show in DFS. All we're talking about is cash games, getting those extra points from our spreadsheets. But we have three alphas on this slate. We have Erling Haaland near 11K. We have Robert Lewandowski in a good spot. And we also have Kylian Mbappe. So let's get to tournaments. Are you going to be playing any of these really giga expensive forwards? There's some value that helps you with that. And which one do you like the most?
Can you tell me what their ownership percentages are going to be?
If you want incorrect ownership, I can tell you what they're going to be.
How about rough estimate? I mean, who is Haaland going to be the most popular out of those three?
I think he's the cheapest out of those three. Let me take a peek.
He is. He'd probably be the most popular if he was the most expensive too.
I think Haaland is going to be the most popular. I think Mbappe will be the second most popular, and I think Lewandowski will be the odd man out. So my guess would be the cheapest one. So this is what you're going to do, Ryan? You're going to be like, I'm just going to take the low owns guy. And then,
no, that's not what I'm going to do. Look, I'm always like fading Haaland in these spots. The only time I come back to it is when I think like, do other people look at this spot as a fade City spot? I think people do, but then there's not really anywhere else to go. So yeah, I think Haaland will end up being pretty popular. I'm mostly fine with fading that. People that listen to this show know I've been fading Haaland for a year or so, pretty much. Sometimes I play him, but mostly I fade him, and it doesn't work. I'm just telling you guys that mostly it has not worked. Yeah, I don't know. What else can you say? I'm not probably not going to play Haaland. I was hoping that maybe Mbappe wouldn't be that popular. He's kind of overpriced on this slate, especially compared to all the other guys. And I just like Mbappe. I think he's the best. So I play him when other people aren't going to play him. So I lean Mbappe.
That would be my lane too, if you put a gun to my head, because again, I just said I felt best about Diogo Costa. So I mean, in that case, then I don't really like Lewandowski as much, especially compared to Mbappe. Hopefully, Price keeps it. I think Price should keep everything in control. Like it won't be like over 25-30%. Knock on wood. So I like that play a lot. There was a slate last year where I played Randall Colomwani. I jammed him, so he's only 7K in this spot. Maybe I'll run it back.
You jammed him when he was on like Eintracht Frankfurt, though, right?
And he was like 5,800, and he got a red card. Tough day.
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. That was tough.
That was tough, but hey, maybe I'll jam him again at only 7K. I think that's fine, especially if you're playing Trippier. So if I want to play Trippier and I kind of want to tweak, my cash game shell. Having a nice back and forth matchup with him and Mbappe, maybe that game has quite a few goals. So as far as a game environment goes, like I don't see this Porto Barcelona match, going over 2.5 goals. Like if you forced me to bet a side in total, I would say under for that match. Whereas the PSG Newcastle match, I think that has more powder keg energy to it. So I agree. I like Mbappe if you're going to spend up. And Steve, I will be fading Haaland. I can't help it, and you can shout it from the sky when he scores a brace on me. We've been talking for too long already, Ryan. Mostly cash games. We've highlighted some plays. Any other final tournament thoughts for the people? Any musings? Any things that maybe were under discussed, you think?
Yeah, let's see a couple things. Yeah, so this $3,600 Crasso, we were talking about.
We didn't talk about what to do with him in tournaments. Yeah.
Right. Well, the center forward in die is 3,500. So yeah, you might get an ownership discount there. That seems okay. Let's see. What have we? Bayern Milan, Dortmund Milan. I was looking, Pulisic. If I was going to play a Milan guy, I was looking at Pulisic. He's been taking a few corners, and he's honestly, Pulisic is still underrated at this point. Guy has been sort of unlucky. Like unlucky not to be a star yet. He's that good, and he's been shining for Milan. Like, it's a tough game to target. We don't really like to
Yeah.
play Milan as it is, and
No.
on the
I was about to
road. But
say.
who else are you gonna play? Do we want to play Porto guys?
No.
Not really. We don't really want to play Barca guys. We get Costa. We said we like this young boys Red Star game. We play Lazio guys. We sort of mentioned that. Leipzig guys against City. I don't know.
I don't really want to play any of their attackers. That's my problem. Like, I don't really want to play Lois Openda. Xavi Simmons seems okay, but he's 8,100. I just feel like if I play a Red Bull guy, I'll just play David Raum and hope he gets an assist and that other people score goals for me.
It's actually a great segue. This isn't really going to help anybody in DFS tomorrow because we don't have this guy projected started. But I've been waiting for a while to talk about Leipzig because maybe somebody can somehow make some money on this. I know you used to be able to, like betting on players who are going to increase in value. But Ben Sesko, this kid, I don't know how he's not starting yet.
Slovenian, right?
He's
I played
so
him in
good.
Euro qualifiers.
He's so good. I'm just telling you, this kid is the real deal. He's only 20. He's already valued at like 25 million or so, but I'm telling you, this kid is like world class from what I've seen. Unfortunately, if he starts for 4,400, I might just have to take a shot on him because I've seen him score so many sick goals already. He's 6'4", and he's got like the skills of someone that's not 6'4". So yeah, I don't know. I really like Sesko, but yeah, I'm not paying 8K for Openda or, I don't really play Pulse. Yeah. As we go back to what we said at the start, it's a tough slate because you want to fade City, you want to fade Barca, and like, there's just not that many spots to go. It's interesting. We Champions League slate where maybe floor points are slightly more valuable than we're used to thinking of them. I think it's, you might want to have Foden or Alvarez or Foden in maybe every lineup. I don't know. Like, there might not be that many. I know it's Champs League, so these games could go off, but there might not be as many goals out there as we're used to seeing.
I mean, after talking about it, there will be like ownership discounts if you want to play Nick Fulkrug if you want. It'll be there. You can play
for sure. That's
at low
right.
ownership.
Like,
you're
right.
It just feels gross.
You're right, though. You should say that. Like, there'll be ownership discounts on those spots if you want to take him. You can play those guys: Fulkrug, Marco Reus, for sure.
Isak, 7K. I noticed
Isak,
that.
yes. Sorry, I meant to mention Anthony Gordon. I think Anthony Gordon and Isak are both good plays, 7K and 6,800.
Yeah.
Those guys are tournament plays for sure. Yeah, let's see Oz in the chat. Celtic forwards cheap. Again, I don't have like too much respect for like Lazio's decent, but Celtic at home, they're going to be looking for a result there too. Like, and that place will be rocking too. So yeah, I don't mind those Celtic forwards in GPPs. That's a good shout, actually.
Yeah, I think if they're cheap, I think you can make it work. I think that's the appealing part of an Isak or a Kolo Muani or the Celtic forwards. It just allows you to get up to those other strong plays who are, I think, kind of stands out. The cashy type players do seem to be quite the best plays by a strong margin. So I think it makes quite a good deal of sense. Well, I think we've been talking entirely too long. Thank you. We have 40 people listening live. That's awesome for the RotoWire Soccer Show. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Do all that jazz. Subscribe. Join us in the Discord. And most importantly, if you take one of my head-to-heads, make sure that you finish in second place. Otherwise, good luck, everybody. I hope you have a better Wednesday slate than I had a Tuesday slate. Again, unless the head-to-heads. But otherwise, on behalf of Ryan and myself, good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everybody.